Students who got suspended for speaking their native language at school. What happened? The policy started my freshman year when Principal Kaufman announced during orientation that English was the only acceptable language on school grounds. He called it the Unity Through Communication Initiative, claiming it would help immigrant students integrate faster and prevent cliques from forming along ethnic lines. What nobody told us was how the policy would actually work, or what the consequences would be for breaking it. The first week of school, I watched a Korean sophomore get pulled out of the lunch line for answering his phone in his native language. The vice principal confiscated his phone right there in front of everyone and wrote him up for a language violation. 3 strikes meant suspension, and every violation went on your permanent record with a note about failure to comply with school integration policies. The message was clear from day one. Your native language was contraband, something to be smuggled and hidden like drugs or weapons. I had 2 younger siblings at home who barely spoke English, and my grandmother lived with us speaking only Russian. The idea of going an entire school day without being able to use my first language felt suffocating, but I learned to adapt quickly. I developed this weird habit of mentally translating everything before speaking, double-checking each sentence in my head to make sure no Russian words slipped through. My best friend Yuki faced the same struggle, only his family spoke Japanese at home, and his parents ran a restaurant where he worked every evening after school. We'd sit together at lunch speaking careful English even when we wanted to switch languages, hyper-aware of the teachers patrolling the cafeteria with clipboards. Yuki got his first strike in October when a teacher overheard him helping a new exchange student from Tokyo understand the lunch menu. The teacher didn't care that the exchange student was crying and couldn't understand the options. Rules were rules, and Yuki spent that afternoon in detention writing an essay about the importance of English language unity. I remember him showing me the essay later, his handwriting getting messier toward the end because he was so angry. He'd written about how helping someone understand food options wasn't disrupting unity, but the teacher had marked it up with red pen saying he was missing the point. That's when I realized the policy wasn't really about communication at all. The system worked on fear and public humiliation. Every violation got announced during morning homeroom with the student's name, grade, and which language they'd been caught speaking. The announcements always used the same phrasing about students who chose to prioritize their home culture over school community values. My homeroom teacher would pause after each announcement and look meaningfully at me and the 3 other Russian kids in the class. We'd sink lower in our seats while American-born students whispered about how those kids should just learn English already. The whole thing created this hierarchy where being monolingual English made you a good student and being bilingual made you suspicious and potentially disloyal to the school. I started avoiding the Russian students in younger grades because being seen together would draw attention from administrators looking for language violations. My little brother Alexei started at Northridge in January as a freshman, and watching him navigate the policy was torture. He'd been in the country for only 3 years and still thought in Russian most of the time. His English was decent for conversation, but terrible for academic work, and he'd come home frustrated because teachers wouldn't let him use a translation app during class. That was considered another violation of the English-only rule, even though it would have helped him actually learn the material. Instead, he'd sit through lessons understanding maybe 60% of what was said, too scared to ask questions because his accent was thick, and other kids would mock how he pronounced certain words. I wanted to help him during lunch or between classes, but speaking Russian to him on school property would get us both written up. The policy forced us to be strangers to each other for 7 hours a day. My parents didn't fully understand what was happening because the school never explained the policy clearly in other languages. They'd sent home a 1-page letter in English about promoting linguistic unity, but nothing about the punishment system or how it would affect students. My mother thought it was just about speaking English in class, not realizing the rule covered hallways, bathrooms, parking lots, even phone calls made on school property. When I tried to explain it to her, she got defensive and said we should just follow the rules and speak English everywhere to make things easier. She didn't understand that forcing yourself to translate every thought before speaking it out loud was exhausting. By the end of each school day, my brain felt like mush from the constant mental effort of suppressing my first language. I started having headaches that wouldn't go away no matter how much water I drank or how early I went to bed. The policy hit hardest during family emergencies when you needed your native language most. Yuki's grandmother had a stroke in March, and his mother called him during lunch to tell him to go straight to the hospital after school. She was crying and speaking rapid Japanese, and Yuki responded in Japanese without thinking because his grandmother might be dying. A teacher was walking past and heard the whole conversation, and that's when things took a turn I never expected. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below.